plenty of reasons to be ticked off with the Israelites yet again. They had again failed to keep the covenant. And then when the Babylonians attacked them and ransacked the temple and beheaded King Zedekiah, they effectively destroyed the two major symbols of God's relationship with the people, the symbols of God's presence with them. These symbols of how the divine portion of promises were to be fulfilled. So we have two problems here. The people had not kept their promise to God. They had not been faithful to God. And now the two signs they had that God was keeping promises have been destroyed. They can't imagine how they'll relate to God without a king and without a temple. Despair and dread characterize the mood of the Israelites. The relationship between God and the people feels irreparably broken. And Jeremiah has chronicled this all the way through this, up till chapter 31. And here we see we are offered a bold new reality, a new option, a new vision of hope, a new hope. Perhaps we cannot imagine what it feels like to be an occupied people. We can't imagine what it feels like to wonder if our suffering is judgment from God. But perhaps we can understand that. No matter how strong your political views, our country has not been invaded and our leaders have not been murdered. We've not become subservient to those who would cause our suffering and exploit our labor. However, I dare say that we know what fear and doubt feels like in the pit of our stomachs. We understand what it means to have a horribly broken relationship with God. We know the bite of failing God and of wondering if God will fail us also. Those dark moments of our soul are filled with doubt and despair. When we wonder if God has rejected us because of our lack of faithfulness. I know a man named Tim who made a long journey home to see his father. His sister had called him and asked him to come and give her a break. She'd been caring for their father, but it was time for them to move him into a facility as his dementia worsened and they could no longer care for him at home. So Tim went to help settle his father into the new facility and to give his sister, who was at her wit's end, support. Before he got on the train, Helen had told Tim that if there was anything he needed to say to their father, he should be ready to say it. Because the time was coming when their father would no longer recognize him or be able to make sense of anything that he had to say. At first, he thought she was being really dramatic. But after a few days, he began to make a list. So when he got there, when he sat down with his father, he asked him to listen to the list he had prepared for him. And it started with, "I haven't always been the best son to you." It went on to talk about all the things he regretted about their relationship, the ways he'd snuck out in high school, the times that he'd gotten caught, few of the times he hadn't. Talked about the way that he hadn't been able to be there for his father as he aged the way he wanted to. He talked about the time they'd wasted being angry, the time they'd wasted being apart from each other. And at the end of the list, Tim was was in tears. His father looked at him with a smirk on his face. And Tim was confused. He said, "Dad, don't you remember all this stuff?" His father looked at him and said, "I remember some of it, but most of it I don't remember at all. I do, however, remember the important thing." Tim was a little bit frustrated by his father's reaction, and he looked at him and he said, "What's this important thing, Dad?" These confessions felt like the most important thing to Tim. "I remember that I love you, son. And I remember that you love me. And that ain't changing no matter what I forget or what else you remember. God is a forgetful Father. Our God is a forgetful Father who offers us incredible love. The entire Bible is a complex story, a love story of this incredible love and a Father willing to forgive and forget. Some scholars would try to convince you that the covenant that Jeremiah was proclaiming is realized in the person of Jesus. But Jeremiah says that on that day there will be no need for teaching, or for preaching for that matter. Now, wouldn't that be nice? I expect that some of you might like that. In short, I would be unemployed and unemployable. I think that's an awesome idea. And that will be a joyous day when we come to the day when no one needs to hear the word of God proclaimed because it lives in their hearts. When the baskets of our hearts are full with the love of God. On that day, I will gladly go wait tables or do something else. But we know that we're not in a place where the world has internalized the love of God, Jesus' model of self-sacrificing love. There are scant few people who act out the heart of Christ. You listen to the news and it's clear that we're not living in the utopia that Jeremiah describes. And yet, we see glimpses. I saw a video this week of a mother. She was bent over with her head against the chest of a young woman she had never met before. She was listening to the heart of her son beat in the chest of this transplant survivor. That's the moment, the glimpse that we see. These two people, these three people, acting out a selfless love, a godly love. Thinking not of self, but of the other. I wonder, then, how it is that we have a forgetful God who is recreating for us a world which lives in balance and in love, and yet we don't see that realized every day. I can't believe that the work of Jesus Christ is a failure. And yet I know it's not complete. We must do our part. The kingdom is still in process. So what's the next step? If our God is forgetful and loving, perhaps we should also be forgetful and loving. If For our God chooses to characterize our relationship with love, so that our flaws and our debts and our sin and all the stuff that we carry around with us, weighing us down, is unimportant in that relationship. Should we forget it as well? Perhaps there are things that are weighing us down. Perhaps there is sin that we choose to remember when God would choose to forget. The next step is letting go of those things. I want to invite you to take a moment and make a note for yourself of the things that God is inviting you to let go of. I have 2 questions for you. What is the thing that you need to know God has forgotten? And what is the thing God is calling you to forget? Could I get a deacon to help me distribute these? Thank you, honey. Take a moment to write down your responses. And when you're done, I invite you to come forward and visit our sacred paper shredder. And to feed your responses here into the shredder and let go. and in the act of forgetting that we open ourselves to God. Let us enter into prayer. Beloved God, we offer you our hearts for your use and for your service. Fill us now with your love. Search out the dark and hidden places which we have kept walled off from you, and claim them as your own. There is no darkness that your love cannot transform into light. We submit now, Lord, to your love. Amen. Let us sing our hymn of invitation together, number 197, Beneath the Cross of Jesus.